Hi everybody and welcome to another live stream. This is actually the 26th in the live stream series. Someone asked if this is my first one. It's actually number 26. Fantastic. There's loads of people here already, loads of questions coming in. So let's do a couple of follow-ups from last week. First of all, welcome to the live stream. If this is your first time, I'm Gary Bembridge. Welcome aboard. The channel Tips for Travelers is the channel, and the objective of the channel is to make it more fun, make it easier to discover, plan, and have those dream cruise vacations we're all dreaming of. If that makes sense. I thought I'd follow up a couple of my notes, which you're not going to be able to read my writing. It's really bad. Hopefully I can. I thought I would do a couple of follow-ups from last week. A couple of people had left comments saying that I talk too fast in the live streams. So I've given myself a little post-it note, slow down, and I'm going to stick that up there to remind me to keep talking slowly. So hopefully I'll do that. One person did suggest that I go on a speech course, but I think probably my post-it note will be more than enough. Second thing that I had model up. You might have noticed that I've changed the model here to the QE2, and the Queen Mary 2 has been boosted to the top shelf. So someone asked me to see the QE2 model. So there you go. The other follow-up we had is towards the end of last week's live stream, a couple of people asked about Sarah Bolton, who I know is here with Earl Grey Tea. She'll soon migrate to Rooibos, hopefully. Wonderful, a tea thing there. Oh, a couple of people said, what about having Sarah on the live stream at some point to talk about booking through travel agents, various booking questions, which I think is a great idea. Sarah's very happy to do that. And we just have to now agree, first of all, I have to sort out the technology, which I'm sure I can do, and the best date. Now, I was actually thinking, Sarah doesn't know this yet because I haven't spoken to her about the date, but Sarah's due to go on the MSc Virtuosa on the 24th of May, so pretty soon. So maybe we'll tie having her after she's been on that, because that might be great to get some insights around that as well. Other news, I think I told you I was doing 5 of the back to cruise sailing seacations, whatever they've been called, out of the UK. This week that became 6. I've actually been asked by Virgin Voyages to go on one of their cruises. So I'm going to be doing that hopefully. So that's one to add. And one of the other live streams, or perhaps on a video, I'm going to talk a little bit about the whole thing of being invited on cruises and not being invited on cruises. And I'll go into much more detail about what my thinking on that is. But basically, I go very occasionally when I'm invited onto cruises. Mostly it ends up being shakedown cruises. So when ships come out for the very first time out of shipyards, and cruise lines often run those preview cruises a day or 2 nights, and I'll often go on those because that's a chance to see a brand new ship. But mostly I would pay for my own cruises, and I'll have maybe that's a discussion for another day, but I have been invited on the Virgin Voyages, so that one hopefully will happen. So I thought I'd do a couple of bits of news before I get into all these great questions. You might have seen some reports which have not been confirmed by Royal Caribbean or the Cruise Center, which is run by crew and for crew, and it's a great site, which I recommend you take a look at. It's on Facebook as well as a site. They've reported that the captain has told the crew that the Odyssey of the Seas will no longer be doing its sailings out of Israel, and the ship will actually be transferring some crew onto Anthem of the Seas to come to the UK, and the ship will then head to the US, to Fort Lauderdale, I believe. Now, that has not been confirmed. I stress it's not been confirmed at certainly the time of recording this live stream by Royal Caribbean, but a number of crew members have said they have been told that, and that's what the Cruise Center is reporting. So one to watch, obviously, because of all the troubles that are happening in Israel. So what else do I have? Disney, you might have seen a couple of cruise lines. Carnival done it. Disney have now, just yesterday, cancelled a number of their cruises. The significant one is they've cancelled Dream and Fantasy to the end of July. Obviously, we've got Magic doing the UK from the 15th of July, but they have kept the Wonder of the Seas sailing from the 12th of July. We've also seen, of course, Carnival pulling quite a few ships off, but having 1 or 2 kicking around in July. So there's increasing hope and optimism that actually the July date, we will see some cruising happening out of the US. And in fact, on Friday, the CDC, because they've been issuing almost non-stop updates. The CDC issued another update on Friday where they have said there's a whole bunch of things, and maybe I'll put a link in the actual notes of this so you can go look at it. But one of the interesting things is more and more the drift or the move into opening cruising and seeing cruise and lifting restrictions for vaccinated passengers. And they've said that vaccinated passengers, when they go on cruises, will no longer have to be tested before, during, at the end, or if they're doing back-to-back cruises. So we're seeing quite a lot of movements there. So those were my little updates. So we'll put that down there, and we'll get into some of the questions. And keep looking at my thing saying slow down, so I'll make sure that I slow down. So we have loads and loads and loads of questions. So I might dial right back up to the very top. And we'll do a mixture of there's some ones which are around updates, and there's a whole bunch of them around some very specific questions. So why don't we just kick off with one of the ones which is more challenging to answer. So the JM129, greetings, comes to the live streams a lot and always asks really difficult questions, which is always great. So it's uncertain whether booster jabs will be beneficial, approved, and available in 6 months after full vaccination. Is there a time deadline for cruises when you'll no longer could be considered vaccinated? Which is a really interesting question, one I've also been wondering, and I haven't seen any discussion around that topic at all. But clearly, I guess that will only become clear once it's very clear on what the boosters are. So let me give you an example. In the UK, it's already been announced that everybody over the age of 50 will be getting a booster vaccination from September onwards. So the timing when they normally would do the flu jab. And so everyone over 50 is going to be getting that jab. And it's actually going to be the Pfizer jab specifically. They've just ordered 60 million doses or whatever that is so everyone over 50 is going to be vaccinated. Of course, what's happening in the UK is they're accelerating because the Indian variants popped up and is growing very fast in the UK, and they're actually pulling forward the vaccination program even faster overall as well. So we don't know the answer to that, and it's one that we really have to watch because nobody really knows, I guess, the longevity of this, but it does seem that countries are building and planning those boosters. So it's definitely one that I will keep an eye out for because I'm particularly interested in that particular topic as well. Jumping a little bit to another side, a very practical one, Nigel, flying from Belfast. Nigel's also a regular here on the live streams, so that's fantastic. Nigel, thank you very much. Flying from Belfast to Heathrow the day before our cruise, then need to get to Southampton. You're thinking taxi, or is it any other way you suggest, or is it the best way? Well, Nigel, a taxi from Heathrow to Southampton will cost an absolute fortune if you do it that way. So there's a couple of options. Now I live in West London, actually not that far from Heathrow. But what a lot of people will do is you can actually book normally coach transfers from Heathrow down to Southampton, which I'm assuming will be coming into play to support these cruises that are starting. I'm just assuming you're doing one of the startup cruises, June, July, August timing. And so there is a coach service which runs, and that's really pretty inexpensive. And of course, we'll go to the specific cruise terminal. So that's a really good one. The other thing that I tend to do, though, is I often get the train, but from Heathrow, that's not very practical, getting the train. But what I'd actually perhaps look to do, if you don't want to use the coach option, is to perhaps book one of the transfer companies. So there's a number of transfer companies. I don't have any particular one that I recommend. I often use either look at Holiday Extras, or I've forgotten the name of the other one I use. But there's a couple. I basically go onto Google and I search like transfers from Heathrow to Southampton, and there's a whole bunch of companies that will come up. You can do shared ones, individual ones. So getting a taxi, particularly a black taxi, would be really expensive. I would either do the coach option, or I would pre-book some kind of transfer. And actually, just the other day, I was actually discussing that whole transfer with Sarah, actually, around the different options and what she does and recommends. And does she have any particular provider? And she didn't have a specific provider either. Hetty also here, back home in Maryland. I think you were in Florida last week. I can't remember. Good to see you back there, Hetty. And Bob, Innocence Abroad here. By the way, Innocence Abroad, Bob, they just launched a series around Iceland. I think it was on Celebrity, if I remember correctly, Bob, which I think is into its fourth part. I think you've either edited or just editing. So if you're interested in that, definitely something to check out. Good afternoon from, I said that horrible, Worcester, from Worcester. I've got a cruise booked for October, fantastic. So that'll hopefully be one of those that are spreading further abroad. So Lucia, I booked 2 weeks on Seabourn out of Athens, very nice indeed. Any suggestions for pre-cruise hotel in Athens and must-see sites in 2 days? Well, let me talk about the last one first. I mean, obviously, the absolute must-do in Athens is the to go to the Parthenon and up the hill, and it's just amazing. Not only because it's historically amazing, the ruins are amazing, but also you get great views over Athens. So that's a definite must. Big tip on that, although this year might not be so bad, but normally that is manically crazy with tourists. You literally can't move up there. So look and find when that opens early and get up there as early as you can. Partly because it's a nice light. It's not as it's cooler. It's not as hot because Athens gets really hot, and you can actually get great pictures without throngs and throngs of people. Now, in terms of Athens, in terms of hotels, I've stayed mostly when I've been in Athens. I used to go there a lot for work. My boss actually was Greek, and although we had global jobs, I'd stayed living in London because I was traveling all the time. He was living in Athens because he was traveling all the time, even though most of our business was in the US. Anyway, too much information. But basically, so I would stay at different hotels. But the hotel that I quite liked was actually a Hilton hotel, which is sort of in more downtown part. You actually can get nice views across to the Acropolis itself. I've got a feeling I called it the wrong name earlier, but the Acropolis itself, and that's great. It's not crazy expensive. It's quite modern. The other places I've stayed are more out in the suburbs, which are less central. So that would be my tip. Also, it'd be interesting. What I'd recommend, Lucia, is take a look and see what Seabourn are offering. Are they offering some kind of package with tours and also transfers? Because also, what I would say is from Athens to Piraeus, the port is quite far. I think it takes an hour or so, if I remember correctly. So also you want to check out that whole transfers particular thing as well. If anyone else has any great tips about Athens, take a look at it. The other thing I would say, Lucia, is I actually have a podcast, which is a little bit old, but obviously the sites don't change, which again, I'll make a note actually to put in, but I have a podcast about Athens, which does talk a little bit about getting around and some of the key sites. So I'll also put that in there. But the Acropolis is the absolute must do. So time for a slug of tea, and let's get on with Swan's question. Swan is asking, booked with Viking for a Mediterranean cruise in October 2021. We Canadian and our American friends will be fully vaxxed by that time. Any hunch as to whether EU ports will be open to North Americans by then? Well, there is quite a lot of developments on that front happening. And I would say way before that period of October, you're going to be perfectly fine. The plan is to open imminently within like May, June timing. It's not confirmed yet. I think a lot of it's going to hinge around the Indian variant, which is becoming of concern of COVID. As I mentioned earlier, it's starting to bubble up in the UK. It's not planned at the moment. It doesn't think it's going to be slowing down the initial unlocking that happens from Monday, when things like you can dine inside, hotels are opening. But there is discussion around it might slow down some of the other openings. So if that starts spreading across Europe, this may slow it down. However, the plan is for the EU to allow people in from third countries, either across the EU or in sort of selected countries by that May, June time. Some are pushing for June. So, for example, Portugal is open to the UK, which is a third country now, not part of the EU, from Monday, actually. France is talking about opening imminently, and Greece and places like that are talking about opening. So you should be fine. The other thing they're introducing, or they've approved, is, and they keep changing the name, but it's kind of the digital, you can also get a paper digital pass system, which will have vaccine details. And if there are any testing required, it would also hold test information. That's going to be an EU specific app, but they're talking to all the key countries like the US, the UK, etc., to make all the systems compatible. So I know, for example, in the UK, our version of it is due to go live next week, although actually on one of the apps, it's already live. I can already look at my vaccine sort of pass, what it's called. Also importantly, the other point is what a lot of those countries, the tourist countries, which you're likely to be calling in on your cruise, are talking about removing the testing part for entry. At the moment, it's still required, even though you're vaccinated. So, for example, coming to the UK, testing is still required. A couple of the countries require it, but I think by October, the discussion is for vaccinated to lift it. Also, by October, the EU will be very, very, very far down their vaccination process. So, I think things are looking pretty good, and you'll be able to soon. Lucia's from Phoenix, Arizona. Fantastic. I love that part of the world. Lots of people asking. Lots of people in here appear to be on those various seaborne cruises, which is fantastic. Bill, also another regular, big supporter of the channel, which is fantastic to see here. And Annie and Kirsty as well, good to see you again. And I think we finally get to meet in person on Queen Elizabeth in July, which is pretty good. So Bob always has a challenging question. What's Bob asking? Do you think the CDC news today, fully vaccinated, not needing embarkation, de-embarkation testing, will affect other countries' debark procedures too? Bob, I think we're seeing that. I think yes is what we're seeing. I mean, I'm seeing almost every day different countries talking about lifting the testing requirement, particularly for vaccinated passengers. I've seen a couple of the Caribbean countries lifted, as I mentioned. We're seeing that in some of the European countries as they're open for the UK. The UK is being pretty strict on the testing piece, partly because the UK has probably had more open borders than many of the other countries. So I think we will see it. And I think what we will see, because I think we've seen it already, is these protocols are going to move really, really quickly and evolve really quickly. Now, the UK cruises, let me give you an example. So the UK cruises, which start this coming week, so MSC Virtuosa actually starts sailing on the 20th, its very first cruise. And guests have to have a PCR test done within 3 days of arriving because they aren't having vaccinated passengers. All the protocols, the masks, the reduced capacity, only 1,000 passengers on that 5, 6, 7,000 passenger ship, whatever it is. Social distancing, contact tracing, no self-service buffets, all those kind of regulations, which you're all fairly familiar with. However, what we don't know is what will happen on the 21st of June. On the 21st of June is when the UK is due to basically remove most of the restrictions. So things like, I know ships are now, from the 21st of June, will be increasing capacity fairly significantly. We don't yet know whether the mask requirement will be dropped on land. That's the plan, to make it advisory rather than required. Then it's likely to happen the same on ships. So I think what we're going to see is, as the vaccination becomes more and more prevalent, we will see very fast evolving. I mean, if you look at the CDC, I know there's lots of criticisms of the CDC, but it feels like the CDC in the US are almost daily issuing new edicts, which actually is probably, in my view, gets very confusing. You saw in the UK when we were doing lots of changes, people got really confused. And we're seeing these key dates. So the UK has its certain unlock dates. Other countries have their unlock dates. So I think we're going to see a very fast evolution of this process, particularly, if you look at vaccination rates. The UK, I think, is up to 65, 66% had at least one jab now, some high in the US. So, seeing really, really fast evolution, I think, is going to be the absolute name of the game. Well, it's good. Someone, Lucy is saying, we took Harry's advice and picked the itinerary and then looked at the cruise line and hit most of our must-see ports. That's great to know. It's always good to see when people let me know that some of the things work out. So that's fantastic. Right, AI83. I booked a weekend cruise in Sky Lady in August, but my better half might not be fully vaccinated by then. If I were to go on my own, would I still get a full onboard credit or only 50%? Okay, so with the Virgin, and if I'm wrong, Sarah, I'm sure will pop up and correct me. But what Virgin do is they are, well, first of all, let's hope that your better half does get their vaccination. Certainly in the UK, with them dialing it up, like my partner was only due to have his vaccination on the 31st of May, but they were talking last night about pulling those all forward, so reducing from 12 weeks to 8 weeks, etc. So maybe, hopefully that will happen. I know Sarah, her vaccination has been pulled forward, etc. But anyway, so the way that Virgin is working is the onboard credit is per cabin. So we'll see it in some different places. So for example, I know when I book on Cunard, when I go with Mark, is you can see on the statement there's an onboard credit allocated for each person individually. But what I've seen with those Ccations, as they all seem to be calling them, is the onboard credit is per cabin. So for example, when I was looking at the Virgin one, there was an amount per cabin. P&O Cruises have just announced they're now adding onboard credit as well to those cruises. It's per cabin. So I'm doing that one solo. I'm going to get the full amount. So I'm pretty sure, and maybe Sarah has a different perspective, but I'm pretty sure you will get that. But hopefully the vaccination definitely comes through. Gavin and Luke are here as well. They've recently, I think I mentioned before, they've changed the name of their YouTube channel to Cruise Monkeys, and they just had, was it yesterday or the day before, their wedding anniversary, which I think was 7, maybe 9 years. Congratulations to them as well. And they are actually, so just one thing to say, Cruise Monkeys, I think I'm like 99% right, correct me if I'm wrong, Gavin and Luke, will also be on the MSC Virtuosa that sails this week. There's quite a few cruise vloggers on that. So I know Ben and David are on that, Emma Cruises is on that, and a few other people are on that. So if you do want to keep an eye on social media, I'm sure they'll be posting lots, and I'm sure there'll be videos to come after that. Right, this is always a good one. Peter asking, is it better to book your cruise with a travel agent or direct with the cruise line? Now, I used to book all my cruises with the cruise line, and then I stopped doing that, and I moved to booking them all through a travel agent. And I was doing that in the run-up to COVID, and COVID even reinforced that even more so. And I've actually got a video very specifically, so I'll write that in my little notes. I'll actually put the video that I've got about agent or not agent video around that. Now I'll tell you my perspective. The important thing to bear in mind, I think, is you will always get, at least, at worst, if you like, the same price as booking with the cruise line at worst. So, but you will also get all the benefit of having an agent. So the agent will do all the running around, do all the paperwork, remind you of things, let you know if there's a specific deal, if there's extra something to be got, an upgrade to be got. They'll do all of that. And also, really importantly, particularly, and hopefully this will become a thing of the past, is if you need to cancel or change, they take all the sweat, all the heat. So it has been an absolute dream for me, because most of my cruises that I had booked as we were heading into 2020, 2021, and so on, which have been booked multiple times, it's literally an email or a phone call, or in fact, Sarah's told me and said, look, this has been cancelled. I've moved it, I've got the onboard credit, I've got the future cruise credit, I've applied it, this is what's happening, I can match this fare, can't match that fare, and I just then do what I do. Whereas I had 2 cruises which I hadn't booked with, the older cruises that I hadn't booked through a travel agent. They were an absolute nightmare because I had to do all the contacting and stuff. So at worst, you're going to pay the same price, possibly a better price. You're going to get all the advice. You're not going to get the sales pitch. Now, I used to book online anyway. And if you have specific requirements, like I'm very fussy about the type of cabin I have, and so sometimes I'd have to figure that out myself, and I'd have to go online and I'd have to look at all of the deck plans and watch the YouTube videos, et cetera, et cetera. Now I literally have my list of what it is I want, and travel agent Sarah knows exactly the type of cabin I want. And in fact, has come back on a cruise I wanted to go on and said, okay, I can't get you that cabin. What do you want to do? Well, I don't want to do it. Whereas I might not have understood that when I was doing it myself, that cabin wasn't the right cabin. So I certainly, I guess proof is in the pudding. I would use a travel agent. I definitely think it's better. And if other people have any other perspective. The other good thing, travel agents also, particularly the big groups of travel agents, because they're doing lots of bookings with a particular cruise line, then they often might get deals earlier. Or certainly what I found with these, when cruises come on sale, they have a more of a direct line themselves into the specific sales team, a trade sales team. So I was finding I was actually getting my bookings done like as it went on sale. So clearly it was able to be done before. So I had them all locked up, and I heard people were struggling to make websites work and that sort of stuff. So that's another perk. So that's a pro. Seema Stains, I will touch on this, because people come in and out and join that, so I try not to repeat too much stuff, but I will repeat the odd piece here. So Odyssey Seas, it's not been, certainly unless it's happened when I've been on here. The crew are reporting that they've been told it's been cancelled, but Royal Caribbean have made no specific message yet. I want to come back to the travel agent thing, because I think I might have seen something there. One of the things I would say when I talk about travel agent, I just want to be clear, I'm talking about a person, not like an online agency as such. I'm talking about an individual is what I use. So for example, there are groups like Travel Counselors, which Sarah's part of, there's Go Cruise, there's a few others, but it's an actual person. So it's not like through Vacations to Go or Cruise 118 or Cruise.com or Cruise Direct or whatever. It's very specifically with a person agent rather than a kind of a group. David, can you take a travel kettle for your cabin? No. That is one of the items you cannot take. You can't take anything with an element. So you can't take, you can't take a travel kettle, you can't take an iron, you can't take a little hot plate. Some of the cruise lines even used to stop you taking hair straighteners, which didn't really bother me that much. So some of them have moved on that. So no, I've actually got another video which talks about the things you can't take, and I do touch on some of that. But what you'll find is if you ever want to check the list for a cruise line very specifically, you'll often find in the frequently asked questions section around what is prohibited. And the list is pretty long. But it tends to be things that most people don't worry about, like drones or firearms or stuff like that, big knives, the obvious things. But certainly anything with an element you are not allowed to take. Now, what's interesting though is and it's quite interesting because the cruise lines told me this, is when cruise lines often put their ships sailing out of the UK, they put kettles into the cabins because people sailing out of the UK want to have tea and coffee making facilities in their cabin. So a lot of them will actually put them in their cabin when their ships are sailing out of the UK, and they take them out, when they're not sailing there. So one of the things and I don't know because I've never done Royal Caribbean, is that you can ask to have one once you're there, but you can't bring it on board at all. So there was a question, just a follow-up question on Odyssey of the Seas around someone asked about will it go to Florida? I've missed the question. I missed it here. Yes, what they've been told, what the crew have been told, is they're heading back to Florida. They're heading back to Florida. So there is an assumption that what crewcenter.com is saying is crew have been told those that don't have, I guess, the ESTA or the visa will be transferred onto Anthem of the Seas, which will be sent out of the UK. So they're going to be putting people who can go in and out of the US onto that ship. Again, just to stress, it's not confirmed. I'm going to answer this. To upgrade or not upgrade the tick box, that is the question. I never, ever, no, that's not true. I 99.9% of the times never click the upgrade button, but that's because I'm probably a bit of a freak. I just realized my t-shirt says work hard, but I should have set the camera so it says work hard, cruise often. So if you think that I'm showing off that I work hard. So in terms of the upgrade thing, I'll tell you why I don't tick it. Because I, as I mentioned earlier, I am particularly fussy about the kind of cabin that I have. So I like it to be surrounded on all sides by the cabins, because that gives me the greatest chance of it being quiet, not being somewhere noisy. I want to make sure it hasn't got an interconnecting door. I had some really bad experiences with people next door making noise, partying, televisions, screaming kids, whatever. And I like it to be, if I can, midships. And a lot of people like the rear of the ship. I like midships because it's easier to get around. I like it to have a balcony and so on and so on. Now, the issue is if you tick the upgrade box, in almost all cases, you have no option to refuse what they upgrade you to. So if you're not bothered, if you really genuinely are not bothered by any of those things, then tick the upgrade box. But bear in mind, you, in theory, will get the worst next best upgrade. So people who like me, who know their cabins and choose their cabins, the upgrades are going to be into the ones that are left over. Now, of course, if you're in a balcony and the next upgrade is a suite, the chances are that the suites were really good. But a lot of suites have interconnecting cabins, which puts me off. So my advice normally is, if you are particular about your cabin, if you spent time choosing your cabin, don't tick the upgrade box. Now, saying that, of all the next, if I think about the next 10 cruises, I've got 10 cruises booked. I must have 10 cruises booked. If I look at the next 10 cruises I've got booked, there's only one where I've ticked the upgrade button. And that is because if I got upgraded, it's on the Cunard trip. And in fact, we're going in a Q3, whatever it is. I can't remember exactly what it is. But there is only 2 sets of cabins, which is a total, I think, of about four or five cabins, 2, 4, maybe 5 cabins that I could possibly be upgraded to, which is a Q2, which is the Coronia suite, or I can't remember what it's called, which is a massive 1-bedroom suite, which I've been looking up on one of those similar short things to have stayed in. We decided to treat ourselves. Or it's the 2 at the back, the Q1s, which I've also seen because people that we met on a cruise were staying in those. So I know that I can, if I get upgraded, it's only to one of those cabins. So that's the only one that I've ever ticked. So that's my thought. But I know a lot of people disagree. I see someone's recommended West Key Cars in Southampton. That's actually who I was actually looking at, Francis, when I've been looking at some of the transfers that I'm looking at for my cruises. So that's a good one to know that they're good. Wow, thank you very much, Crazy Friendship Girl, which has left what's it called? A super chat, which is fantastic, and really appreciate it. And hopefully we will see you online soon, on Wednesday, hopefully. So that's good. Interact between Crazy Friendship Girl and I. 2 Peter Jones. Oh, there are 2 Peter Jones here. Interesting enough, I was planning to go to Peter Jones, the department store, tomorrow to look at chest of drawers. So I'm assuming you're not connected in any way. Bob was saying part 2 of 4 airs today. I think you're editing part 4 of 2. Just if you joined us, Bob is doing a series on celebrity trip around Iceland, which is really worth looking at. So Yvonne is asking, Yvonne is asking the question, I want a leg of the Princess will cruise out of Los Angeles in January. How long will Princess wait to decide if they will sail, as I need to book a flight from the UK to Sydney? So you're sailing out of LA, but you're sailing from the UK to Sydney. Okay, well, Yvonne, I guess the key thing is Australian government has said that they're unlikely to be opening their borders until sometime into 2022. And I know Qantas have cancelled all their flights now to at least December. So the big question mark is, will you be able to even get into Australia? Number one. Number two, will you be able to get in or out without quarantining, etc.? So that is the big thing. I'm trying to work out the logistics if you're setting out of LA, but without sitting to UK. So the big, if anything's involving Australia at that time, it's looking extremely questionable. There's been a couple of things in the paper this week, and friends of ours who live in Australia were hoping to come at Christmas. They've now cancelled all that because they've basically pretty much been told forget international borders opening until into 2022. So that's that would be my only key watch out. In terms of, so I guess also in terms of their ability to sail, that is going to depend a lot, which links very neatly into, because I'm assuming Australia's involved somehow. You're probably going from LA, Hawaii, down New Zealand to Australia, I'm guessing. That's what they normally do. So Radu is asking, any chance of the Trans-Pacific cruising will be opened in October, Hawaii to Sydney? Radu, at the moment, it's looking very iffy because the Australian government they're due imminently to announce when they push the ban of cruising a little bit further. I think I'm right in saying it's due to expire in June-ish time, but they do it so any time now. We should see when that's happening. There is actually, I posted on my Twitter feed today, there is a CLEAR, the cruise line organization in Australia, is again lobbying the government to allow some sort of cruising to happen. There's on the Australian Parliament site, they have like an what's it called where you sign? I've forgotten the word, it's gone beyond my head. Petition, thank you. Petition, which has been created, again, lobbying the Australian government to open cruising. So it's really, really uncertain. I think October, with the way that Australian is looking at opening their borders, seems extremely unlikely. Their vaccination process is moving very slowly. They are not committing to do vaccinations until at least, their target is shifted into next year. So Australia is very much, of course, as we know, having this very kind of no COVID scenario, and it's very sensitive. So it does seem very challenging. Of course, I don't know the answer, but based on the borders opening and their extremely conservative approach to COVID cases, seems pretty unlikely. But that's the best. And Steve, the point is, I guess we're talking about that well, because we haven't seen any of the cruise lines coming out yet talking much about world cruises. And I could be asking that last week. And it's hard to know. I think we won't hear much until really close to time. I know that final payments start becoming due. I think it's so sort of October, November, December time. So towards the end of September is when final payments become due. So I think we will only get much more of a sense around that sort of time. So that's challenging. And there's a couple of questions on insurance, and I think I might have missed one. So I'm just looking at my little thing here. So I'll come back I'll check if there's a thing on insurance. But I'll answer Eric Friend's question. I've heard the celebrity require mandatory COVID-19 insurance with a minimum of £2.5 million cover for UK coastal cruises, with proof being required prior to boarding. Your comments, please. Eric, absolutely yes. All the cruise lines sailing out of the UK require this, and you do have to have proof. Now, before the whole COVID situation, you just had to fill out when you checked in, you had insurance and you put in a number, and no one really checked. But you're right, you have to have insurance for these cruises, and you have to show it at check-in. And it's really important. It has to, first of all, be cruise specific. So you have to have a policy that expressly says that it covers cruise. So for example, I used to have insurance with a company because I needed to get insurance covering pre-existing conditions because I'm in remission from cancer, so I had to get a pre-existing conditions insurance. But they would cover me to go on cruises, and because I'd checked that before I'd gone to Antarctica. However, it wasn't cruise specific cover, so I actually moved from that company. So you need to make sure that it says on your policy that it's cruise cover specifically. Secondly, it has to cover COVID-19 from a medical perspective, not just from a cancellation perspective. And you're right, it has to be the £2.5 million. Now, the good news is, though, that actually there's a lot of insurance companies that are now offering COVID cover. And there's also a lot that will offer cruise specific, and you can get some at pretty good prices. Now, a lot of the cruise lines are linked to, certainly a lot of the Carnival Corporation cruise lines are. I haven't looked at who Celebrity are linked to because I've already got my insurance, but they have a partnership with a company called Holiday Extras. So I would say if you haven't got your insurance, take a look at Holiday Extras. It's one place to start. And they wouldn't cover me because I had a pre-existing condition, which they didn't cover, but they did cover my partner, very fine. Pretty good rate, actually. In fact, I think he actually saved money from what he did actually save money from what renewal with who he was going to be with, and it had actually better cover. I then went to a company called All Clear. which did cover pre-existing conditions. They were, for non-pre-existing conditions, they were very competitively priced with all that stuff. Pre-existing conditions, like everything, expensive. So yes, Eric, absolutely, you have to have it. And all of them do say that you need to show proof of that. So that's really, really important. Here's one I had no idea on. Breckenridge, do you know anything about cruises in Flathead Lake in Montana or Glacier? I don't. I've never heard of that. So if anybody here has, please pop something in there. It would be great, great to know. Peter's saying, contacting has started taking a hardware problem. I'm guessing that everyone else can hear because no one else is saying that. So hopefully you've got that sorted. It was quite a while ago, so hopefully that's got sorted. A1311 West London, so if I bump you, we'll say hi. Yes, please do. I live in Chiswick, so great. Here we are. Yes, Cruise Monkeys confirming they are going to be on Virtuosa, and Sarah confirming, you've probably seen that you should get the full on-board credit. So Zachary Breidenbach, obviously a fan of flying. Do you have a recommendation for a travel agent? I'm planning a Carnival cruise, debating whether or not I need one, and if so, which one I would need. Thank you. Love your channel. Fantastic. Zachary, I do have a recommendation. I'm guessing you're in the US. I do have a recommendation in the US that I know a lot of people have worked with and they've been very happy with. So I have never booked any cruises with him, and it's a company called Red Travel. I'll put the notes. It's a guy called Gary Puck, and I'll put his detail in the notes of this afterwards. But it's called Gary Puck, and Gary Pluck, and he's with a company called Red Travel, and certainly a lot of people I know have been very happy with him. And then Sarah, and obviously the Sarah Bolton, who I use in the UK, who I can. Good point, good watch out actually from Gavin and Luke is who've also used agents. Again, confirming the point about you never pay more. Important point, I think it's an important point, which I've mentioned there, is you often have to pay the final payment slightly before, because clearly what happens is you have to pay to the company, it gets processed, and then they make the payment to the cruise company on that final payment date. So you often do have to pay a week or two earlier. So that's you just need to factor that in. David using Cruise 118 had a chase for discounts, paying straight away. That's an important point. Actually, I'd done a video, which I don't think I've released yet. Actually, I think it's coming out the week after next, around this issue around if you pay your cruise early, which is a good watch out. David has said is it does take away some of your negotiation and leverage when it comes if price shifts move, because obviously you've paid the final balance. It's a little bit harder to get some of those fair balancing issues. So that's a good one. KB in the UK, good to see you again. Has been to of the 26, I think you've probably been to all 26, if not close to them. Is it best to buy insurance at the time you book flights or cruise, even though it may be months in advance of the trip, so you're not actually using it? KB, I would say my view is yes. And I know people like Martin Lewis, the money saving expert, always stresses this very much so. His point is you should actually buy insurance at the same time as you book a cruise, because that is what's going to protect you against cancellation. So many of the cruises or trips that you book may have non-refundable deposits. So if you have to cancel for any reason, illness or something happens with the family, you'll often find that you need that insurance in place to cover you from that very time that you book. So I actually have an annual policy because I do lots of cruises and travel and stuff. So it works out better for me to have an annual policy. So, and in fact, I would also recommend looking at an annual policy, because I've found often that ends up being pretty cost effective. But yes, so it covers you for some of those cancellation issues, and particularly even after you've paid that sort of final balance before you've gone, it's covering you if you've got it in place. If you haven't got it in place, then you could end up losing out. And I learned the hard way on that actually, because we had booked a cruise years ago when my dad was still alive. I booked him and my mum on a Saga cruise, which is a little probably bad thing. In my youth, it was like, oh, they're going to go on Saga. And of course, now I'm going on Saga and very excited about going on Saga. But anyway, for those of you in the UK who watched, Saga is a cruise line specifically targeting the over 50s, and they're beautiful new ships. But anyway, getting sidetracked. So so I booked my dad and my mum on this cruise, and we thought, oh, we'd get around to insurance, etc. We never quite got around to insurance. And then actually, my dad wasn't feeling that well, and stuff, and he didn't really want to go. So we ended up just losing the money because we didn't have insurance in place, and not wanting to go wasn't a reason that the cruise line was prepared to accept as a reason. So we actually lost the money for that cruise. That's kind of a good reason. John, could you please do a video all about the Disney Cruise Line, especially out of Port Canaveral? I absolutely will do that. I haven't yet cruised on Disney, and I'm not cruising on Disney until next year. So 100% I will do it, but it's probably not going to be quick enough for you. I was thinking of going or trying to go on the cruises they were doing out of the UK. The dates didn't really work because a lot of the cruise lines have a 7-day rule where you have to have 7 days in between the cruises, and we couldn't get dates. And then they're doing really short cruises, 2 nights and 3 nights. So I actually thought I can't probably do a good video about Disney that really covers it properly when I'm only on there for basically 2 days, even just physically filming stuff. So the earliest I could go is next year, because already next year is pretty full of cruises because all the ones that got shifted and running out of time. So I will do one. It's actually selling out of Port Canaveral, but unfortunately, it's probably not going to be early enough for you. One of the things you may want to look at is Sean and Steph, the channel Sean and Steph. They did a series on Disney a couple of years ago when Sean was still alive. Very sadly, he died earlier this year. He was only aged 43 of cancer. But so they have they got stuff on Disney, and I've actually watched their Disney stuff when I was planning, because I was originally planning to go on a Disney cruise last year. And I used their video, and they do it from an adult perspective, which is pretty interesting. Pleasure. So D-based, I'm not sure. So yes, one of the things that's interesting, and I think it does work differently, because I've seen a couple of people leave this comment, is around the way travel agents work. And it may be also they work differently in different countries and different models. But I saw a couple of comments there is, the way that I always work with travel agents is I don't pay the travel agent anything. They earn their commission from the cruise line. So it doesn't cost a fee. But I know there are, I think in some countries you pay a fee to the travel agent. So that's, I guess, is a key thing to watch out for. Robin's asking, any update with Canada? We're due to sail with P&O in September. What is the latest I need to notify passengers either way? It's very interesting that you haven't heard from that, because the latest on Canada is all cruises they're not allowing any cruise ships into Canadian waters until February 2022. Now, there is some work going on to try and salvage an Alaska season, and it just passed through the Senate, now goes to the House of Representatives, an act which will give some dispensation from the Passenger Vessels Service Act, which requires ships that are coming out of the US have to go to a foreign port before they get to Alaska. Now, whether that gets through the House of Reps, we don't know. But certainly they've banned all ships. So I know a lot of the cruise lines were hoping that something would get sorted and stuff. So I'm surprised that you haven't seen, but you must be able to, I'm pretty sure you'll be hearing soon, because they will start having to lock down what they're doing in September, October soon. But it's extremely, extremely unlikely that that's going to happen, because Canada just aren't letting ships, unless something major happens in Canada. And Canada seems to be under a lot of pressure with COVID, etc. At the moment. Thomas also said a point about annual policies. Heather talking about buying travel insurance. Everyone's agreeing with that. Same day they book the holiday. So I'm preaching to the converted. Right. So I don't know if people know, but you can go to Alaska with lines that are flagged in the US, like Uncruise and American Cruise Lines. Good point to note, of course, if you do want to sail in Alaska, as Lucy's saying, is you can actually. Uncruise is selling at the moment. They actually pulled calling in Ketchikan this week because Ketchikan had seen a rise in COVID cases. So they canceled their Ketchikan call on one of their cruises this week. But you're right, they absolutely can. You can actually cruise there. So let's have a look in terms, Gary's videos. So Gary's videos, not this Gary, different Gary. Are you sailing on MSC Virtuosa on Thursday? I am. If so, what are you looking forward to most? So great that you're traveling on that. So look forward to seeing Gary's videos on MSC Virtuosa. I'm not sailing on MSC Virtuosa. I decided not to go on any cruises that didn't have vaccinated passengers. Which is a decision I made it. So although I get very tempted, and I even started looking at availability on that cruise because there was still availability, but I think I'm going to stick with that decision. So part of the reason for that is I was one of those people that was in the UK kind of shielding thing, was supposed to kind of shield it for ages. I've had both my vaccines though, so that's good. I did the last one on the 21st of April, but I decided I'm going to stick with the vaccinated cruises. So I'm not on that. I'm probably one of the very few UK-based bloggers and vloggers who aren't on that one, I think. So what am I looking forward to most? So it's slightly different. What I'm looking forward to most is just getting to see how that actually, how it all goes, basically, because we know that MSC have a lot of expertise at running cruises during COVID because they've been doing it a lot during last summer. So I'm really looking forward to it. Personally, I'm not a big fan of those mega ships. So I'm also really interested to see just how big and magnificent it is. I think the last MSC ship I was on was Bellissima, which was the one that was brought into the UK, Bellissima, which was just vast and impressive with the amount of stuff they've got. So I'm just really interested to see how it all goes, and also a lot around the processes. That's probably what I'm more interested and kind of looking forward to. So I look forward to seeing your content as well. So a lot of people have a lot of discussion around this this act that's gone through the Senate to salvage the 2020. It's an interesting question, Heather, because I had always been sort of the view that Alaska was going to be extremely unlikely, but listening to the cruise lines, they do seem much more optimistic. I noticed that both Disney, and I can't remember which one of the ship was it, Disney Wonder? No, Disney. Can't remember which ship they were planning to have in Alaska. I had to write it down on my notes, can't see it there. I noticed that Norwegian said it. I noticed that Royal Caribbean and I think even Carnival spoke about Alaska. So you do get a sense that the cruise lines feel that there is a chance that they, at the very tail end of the season, they may be able to do something in Alaska. And it does seem that the Alaska senators or House of Representatives or whatever that's part of that group do seem to be having some sort of traction. So certainly the cruise lines are eyeing Alaska as an opportunity. The other thing that, as an outsider looking in, is you also get a sense that the cruise lines are looking a little bit away from Florida. Now, this may just be completely wrong, but my impression is, with the cruise lines have pretty much come out, with the exception of Carnival Cruise Line and the Carnival Group in the US, have pretty much come out and said, we want to go vaccinated. We don't want to even do the 95% passenger, 98% crew. We want to do 100 and 100. And also, I guess now that, it's been approved, if I saw correctly, that, the Pfizer jab can go much younger in age. But as we know, in Florida at the moment, the governor is got this rule, well, things are not a rule, it's an order, isn't it? It's a law about not checking for vaccines. So, I noticed a lot that, Carnival made a lot of noise about the ships in Galveston. I saw a couple of the other cruise lines making a lot of noise about Galveston and sailings out of Galveston. I think it was also true with Disney, if I remember correctly. So I give you the sense that Texas seems to be, people seem to be making a lot of noise about Texas in July, and there does definitely much more optimism. So I don't know the pacing and timing. I'm not close enough in the timing, but I get a sense the cruise lines think there's a chance for Alaska and do seem to be kind of gearing up for that. So that's going to be really interesting. And I guess we'll see quite quickly. Good, Craig, you've been watching my video for a couple of years, channel for a couple of years, enjoying your videos. Glad to catch your Q&A today. Fantastic. Thanks for joining. Very, 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 very much appreciated. And Swan's given I don't know what they're called, a super chat, which is thanks very much. Really, really appreciated. On November 26th, 5 days, San Diego, Mexico, Disney Cruises on the Wonder. And where's that due to sail out of? Is that due to sail out of Florida? That would be good to know. Can you talk about medical insurance when outside the USA on Medicare for elders invalid overseas? So albeit asking about medical insurance outside the US Medicare invalid for overseas. I'm guessing it's pretty much the same, with like the UK, with the EU. When the UK was in the EU, we did have a reciprocal sort of agreement where you could get some medical access, but it's all around travel insurance. So the absolute critical thing is travel insurance, and travel insurance will build in that medical side. So someone was asking a little bit earlier, even in the UK, UK passengers sailing in the UK on ships that are either not calling on UK ports or calling on some UK ports are being required to have insurance that covers the medical side. So it's absolutely critical. Now, if you take a look at what some countries are doing, so for example, the Bahamas is doing, is if you're going on any of those cruises out of the Bahamas, you have to buy the Bahamas health certificate or whatever it's called, which then includes the medical cover. So the critical part is that having travel insurance is absolutely critical. Lots of discussion around the vaccine, the not vaccine, discussion, and I think a couple of people are asking around what do we think is going to happen with the vaccine. I mean, certainly what we're seeing, I think what we're seeing very much from the cruise lines, here we are, out of San Diego, thank you, sorry, just a little aside there. What the cruise lines seem to be saying, certainly in the places they're starting up, so let's focus on where they're starting up, which I'm sort of including the US, because if you look at what the cruise lines are saying for starting up in the US, what they're pushing for anyway, and what the CDC is saying is, they're basically saying when we start up, we want to have the maximum layers that we possibly can, because obviously if we have a big outbreak on any of these settings out of the UK, if we have some issue out of the US, it's going to set things really far back. So, and the vaccines, all the data coming out of the vaccines certainly suggests that they have a big impact, and so far on the variants. So I think what we're going to see is in all the startup cruises, vaccines are a key part. Now, what we're seeing, I'm going to use the UK again as an example, is the vaccine rule on all of those lines that are having it. So MSC is not having it, but all the others, Princess, Cunard, P&O, Disney, Virgin, and so on, and Royal Caribbean, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All of those that are sailing in the UK, they all have the vaccine rule, but they only have the vaccine rule up until that end of August, September time. So for example, I have a cruise, which is one of the old cruises that wasn't canceled in September on Cunard. Now that September cruise currently does not have a vaccine requirement to it. In fact, it's just theoretically run as normal. Now that may change, but certainly that startup period seems to be the vaccine thing. What happens post that, I guess, depends on a lot of what happens generally. But certainly, I think vaccines seem to be playing a key part of the opening. I'm seeing lots of activity here with donations and people becoming members and also thank you so much. So Lucia's become a new channel member, which is fantastic. Thank you very much. Our beard, coordination free money. Thanks for addressing my question. Thanks very, 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 very much. Really appreciate it. Yes, she was in Florida. That was good. So again, still have my marbles there. So let me dial back a bit and just make sure that I haven't missed out on any of the other key questions. Oh, I thought I missed one. This is a really important one. John asked a question. I want to do around the UK cruise. Do you know if vaccinated Canadians are allowed as yet need to quarantine? John, at the moment, all of these around the UK cruises, as they start up, are for UK residents only. So no one other than UK residents are allowed. Now, I might be saying that people from Ireland, I think, might be allowed on them, but pretty much you have to be a UK resident. So if you're a Canadian, as a resident of the UK, living in the UK right now, you would be able to go on those. You don't. No is the answer to the question. You're not now at the moment. Canada is, I think, an amber country, if I'm right in saying. So if you were coming in, you'd have to quarantine for 10 days. I don't think you're a red country. If you were a red country, you would have had to quarantine in a hotel at your cost, government supervised hotel. So no, you can't. That applies to all of these cruises up until the end of August time. I think we want to drip a little bit into September. If you want to do around the UK cruise as it starts up again from September, you can do that. But as I was mentioning earlier, the vaccine rule at the moment doesn't apply. But no, it's only for UK residents. So and that's why I think one of the questions people are asking is, you know, just how busy are those things. So here we are, like John saying, I'm UK resident, but living in Canada. Okay, so so you'd have to. It does say UK resident, and I don't know. Maybe Sarah can answer that. Resident. Let's touch on this quick question. How are cruise lines responding to passenger capacity limits on ships, e.g., 50% in the UK? Any sign they're reducing shows or restaurants? Neil, it's a good question. So this reduced rule, the 1,000 passengers or 50%, applies until the 21st of June. After the 21st of June, they are actually increasing the capacity. We don't know exactly what the capacity is, but they're not reducing. In fact, they're increasing the number of shows. So, for example, on Saga, which is the first one that I'm going on the 27th of June, they are putting on more shows because they can only have so many people in the theatre at one time. And the reason they're going on the 21st of June is they think they're selling with 80% capacity or 90% capacity. They normally take 999 passengers, but they're putting on more shows. They're putting on more events. So they're actually increasing the number so that people get a chance to do it. So it's quite the opposite. Actually, for the crew, it's actually more demanding because now the entertainers have to do 3 shows instead of 2 shows a night. So that's that's a challenge. Craig's asking around cruise line affiliated credit cards. Now, I don't know a lot about cruise line affiliated credit cards because they are mostly at the moment a US phenomenon. However, what I would recommend, Craig, is take a look at the Points Guy, who you may or may not know, but the Points Guy who do a lot of stuff around credit cards and stuff. They've done a whole lot around cruise line credit cards. So that would definitely be the place to go and have a look at for that. Wow, a year has gone. God, I'm really getting dodgy. That hour has gone so quick. So many fantastic questions. I hope that I have answered most of them. I'll go back afterwards and check if I have missed any of those and either post those, or I will get back to you, or I'll do them at the beginning of the next Q&A. So thanks so much for joining. I hope you have a fantastic rest of the week. If you haven't watched it, the video that came out on Thursday with rather whatever word, why, which is doing phenomenally well, really, really popular. It's around things that don't make sense on a cruise ship until you find out why it's done that way. If you want to go and watch something now, if you haven't had enough of me, go and take a look at that. But thanks so much for joining me. Have a fantastic, fantastic rest of the weekend. And here's to sailing, great sailing for those of people like Gary's videos who will be sailing this week. Take care.